The moment Jake Sullivan saw his boss completely vulnerable, tears streaming down her face as she sat fully clothed on the bathroom floor, he knew his new job, and the financial lifeline for his daughter's medical treatments, was over. Jake froze in the doorway, his hand still on the knob, as Victoria Chen, the notoriously cold-hearted CEO of Meridian Technologies, looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. The bathroom door had been unlocked, no "occupied" sign in sight, and now here he was. A 34-year-old single father, hired just 3 days ago, witnessing the most powerful woman in the company at her weakest moment. If she fired him, he'd lose the health insurance that would finally cover Emma's specialized therapy, and the six-figure salary that would let them move out of their cramped apartment. But beyond his immediate panic lay a burning question: what could possibly break the Ice Queen of Silicon Valley? "Close the door," Victoria commanded, her voice surprisingly steady despite the mascara tracks on her cheeks. When Jake hesitated, uncertain whether she meant for him to leave or stay, she clarified with unexpected vulnerability. "Close it and stay. Please." The last word seemed foreign on her lips. Jake complied, sliding down to sit opposite her on the cool tile floor of the executive bathroom he'd mistakenly entered while looking for the IT department. He noticed her normally immaculate charcoal suit was wrinkled, her designer heels kicked off beside her. "I received a call 10 minutes ago," Victoria said, staring at the phone clutched in her hand. "My sister was in an accident. She's in critical condition." She looked up, meeting his eyes with surprising directness. "You have a daughter, right? That's in your file. Emma, age 7. Jake nodded, wondering how the CEO knew such details about a newly hired mid-level programmer. "Yes, she's everything to me. My sister is all the family I have left," Victoria whispered. "And I've been terrible to her for years." She handed him her phone, displaying a text message thread. The last message, sent 3 days ago from her sister, read, "I'm done trying, Vic. You've made it clear your company matters more than family. Don't contact me again." Jake's heart sank as he realized the magnitude of Victoria's regret. Before he could respond, his own phone buzzed with an emergency alert from Emma's school. His daughter's condition had flared up again, and she needed to be picked up immediately. Looking from his phone to his boss, Jake faced an impossible choice that would define everything that followed. Victoria noticed his expression change. "What is it?" "My daughter," Jake explained, showing her the message. "She has a rare autoimmune condition. I need to go, but..." He gestured helplessly at their situation. To his astonishment, Victoria stood up, smoothed her skirt, and wiped her eyes. "We're both going. I'll drive you." When he started to protest, she cut him off. "Consider it a trade. You saw me at my worst, now I'll help you at yours. And then we'll never speak of this again." The drive to Emma's school was silent and tense, with Jake stealing glances at his enigmatic boss. Victoria Chen, 38, was known throughout the tech industry for her brilliant mind and merciless business tactics. Her sleek black hair was pulled back in her signature tight bun, though a few strands had escaped during her emotional moment. Despite her composed exterior now, Jake couldn't forget the raw pain he'd witnessed. As they pulled up to the elementary school in her luxury sedan, Victoria finally spoke again. "Why did you apply to Meridian? With your qualifications, you could have gone anywhere." Jake hesitated before answering truthfully. "Your company has the best health insurance for dependents with chronic conditions. Emma needs specialized treatment that costs more than I could ever afford otherwise." Victoria's perfectly manicured hands tightened on the steering wheel. "So it was never about the prestige or the innovation we're known for?" "Those things matter," Jake admitted, "but Emma matters more." Something shifted in Victoria's expression, a softening around her eyes that transformed her entire face. "Go get your daughter. I'll wait here." When Jake returned carrying Emma, a small girl with his same brown eyes and curly hair, wearing a school uniform and looking pale but brave. He was shocked to find Victoria had moved to the back seat, leaving the front passenger side open for Emma. "She'll be more comfortable lying down," Victoria explained simply. As they drove to the hospital, Emma's condition worsened, her breathing becoming labored. Victoria broke every speed limit, using her phone to call ahead to the emergency room. "Tell Dr. Patel that Victoria Chen is bringing in a priority patient," she commanded into the phone. "Yes, that Victoria Chen." At the hospital, Jake watched in amazement as doors opened and medical staff appeared instantly at Victoria's approach. As Emma was whisked away for treatment, Jake turned to thank his boss, only to find her already on another call, this time about her sister. Their eyes met across the waiting room, a moment of understanding passing between them that neither could have anticipated that morning. Hours later, with Emma stabilized and resting, Jake found Victoria in the hospital cafeteria, staring into a cup of untouched coffee. "My sister's out of surgery," she said without looking up. "She'll recover, but it was close. Too close." She finally raised her eyes to his. "I almost lost her without ever making things right." "You still have time," Jake said gently. "Do I?" Victoria asked, vulnerability creeping back into her voice. "After years of choosing work over everything else? After missing birthdays, holidays, even our parents' funeral because of urgent meetings?" Jake took a seat across from her. "I think so. When Emma's mother left us, she said she couldn't handle a sick child. For 2 years, I thought Emma would grow up thinking she wasn't worth staying for. But every day, I try to show her that some people stay, no matter how hard it gets." Victoria studied him with new interest. "Is that why you never miss a deadline, even though you leave precisely at 5 every day?" Jake nodded. "I promised Emma I'd be there for dinner every night. So I work through lunch, come in early. Whatever it takes to keep both promises." "I've never made promises I wasn't willing to break," Victoria admitted quietly. "Maybe that's been my problem all along." As dawn broke over the hospital, casting golden light through the windows, Victoria made a decision that would change the course of both their lives. Standing in Emma's hospital room, watching Jake sleep uncomfortably in the visitor's chair beside his daughter's bed, she sent an email to the entire company announcing a new family leave policy, effective immediately. Then she wrote a second, private email to her board of directors that would send shockwaves through the industry by the afternoon. When Jake awoke, Victoria was gone, but a note rested on Emma's bedside table: "Take the week off. Your job is secure. We'll talk when you return." It was signed simply V, with a phone number he didn't recognize scrawled beneath. Jake returned to work the following Monday to find the office buzzing with rumors. Victoria Chen had stepped down as CEO, appointing her longtime CFO in her place while she took a 6-month sabbatical. No one knew why, and speculation ran wild: health crisis, hostile takeover, secret scandal. Only Jake suspected the truth, but he kept his silence, focusing instead on the mysterious new project he'd been assigned to lead. The project turned out to be a revolutionary health tech initiative focused on rare childhood diseases, including Emma's. When Jake questioned his department head about why he'd been selected, the answer was simple: direct orders from Ms. Chen before she left. Said you had personal insight that would be valuable. 3 months into the project, Jake received a text from the number Victoria had left: "Coffee tomorrow? Need your perspective on something important." He agreed, curious and slightly apprehensive about seeing her again. The woman who met him at the small cafe bore little resemblance to the intimidating CEO he'd known. Victoria's hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and she wore jeans and a simple blouse instead of her trademark power suits. But the most striking change was in her eyes. The sharp calculation had been replaced by something warmer, more present. "My sister and I are starting a foundation," she explained after they'd exchanged greetings. "For families affected by chronic illness. We need someone who understands both the technical and personal sides to help us build it right. She slid a proposal across the table. I'm offering you a job, Jake. One that would let you make a difference for families like yours, with better hours and double your current salary. Jake stared at the document, then back at Victoria. Why me? We barely know each other. Victoria smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. Because in the 5 years I ran Meridian, you're the only person who saw me as a human being first and a CEO second. And because Emma deserves a father who doesn't have to choose between being there for her and providing for her. As months passed, the foundation grew, and so did the connection between Jake and Victoria. She became a regular visitor at their home, bringing books for Emma and taking a genuine interest in her progress. The former Ice Queen revealed herself to be thoughtful, funny, and capable of extraordinary kindness when not buried under the pressures of corporate leadership. On the 1-year anniversary of their bathroom encounter, Jake invited Victoria to dinner at their new house. Purchased with his foundation salary. After Emma went to bed, they sat on the porch swing, a comfortable silence between them. I never thanked you properly, Jake said finally. For everything you've done for us. Victoria shook her head. I should be thanking you. That day in the bathroom, you could have used what you saw against me, or at least gossiped about it. Instead, you showed me compassion when I needed it most. Anyone would have done the same, Jake insisted. No, Victoria said firmly. They wouldn't have. Trust me, I've seen how people react to weakness in this industry. She hesitated, then added softly, you changed my life that day. Jake looked at her, really looked at the woman who had transformed from the terrifying boss he'd feared to someone he couldn't imagine his life without. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he reached for her hand. She intertwined her fingers with his, and something new and fragile bloomed between them. What Jake didn't know that night was that Victoria had been fighting her own battle with the board of directors at Meridian. Her sabbatical had been less voluntary than she'd let on. Several key investors had been pushing for her return, threatening to withdraw their support from the foundation if she didn't resume her role as CEO. The warmth in her eyes as she held his hand masked the weight of a decision she would have to make by morning. Victoria left earlier than usual that night, claiming an early meeting the next day. As she drove home through the quiet streets, her phone rang incessantly with calls from board members and investors. She silenced it, needing space to think. The Victoria Chen of a year ago would have chosen power and prestige without hesitation. But that Victoria hadn't known what it felt like to be part of Emma's science fair project, or to see Jake's face light up when she entered a room. At home, Victoria found her sister May waiting up for her. Since the accident, they'd been rebuilding their relationship, with May now serving as the foundation's community outreach director. May took one look at Victoria's troubled expression and poured them both a glass of wine. You're thinking about the board's ultimatum, May stated, not a question. Victoria nodded. They're offering everything I worked 15 years to achieve. Full control, expanded budget, international expansion. And all you have to do is abandon the foundation and the people who matter to you, May finished. What does Jake think? I haven't told him, Victoria admitted. He doesn't know the board has been pressuring me. May studied her sister carefully. You're afraid he'll tell you to take the offer. No, Victoria whispered. I'm afraid he won't. The next morning, Victoria arrived at the foundation offices earlier than usual. She walked through the open workspace, noticing details she'd never appreciated at Meridian, family photos on desks, the collaborative energy, the absence of fear that had permeated her former company. In her previous life, she'd measured success by stock prices and market share. Now she measured it by the number of families they'd helped, by Emma's improving health, by the way Jake looked at her when he thought she wouldn't notice. When Jake arrived with Emma in tow, it was a school holiday. Victoria was waiting in the small kitchen area, 2 cups of coffee prepared exactly how they liked them. "We need to talk," she said, her serious tone immediately putting Jake on alert. "Emma, why don't you go set up in the conference room with your tablet?" Jake suggested, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. Once Emma was out of earshot, he asked, "What's wrong?" Victoria explained the board's ultimatum, laying out the facts as dispassionately as she could. "They want an answer by noon today," she finished. Jake was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" "That's just it," Victoria said, frustration edging into her voice. "A year ago, I wouldn't have hesitated. Now." She gestured helplessly. "Now there's you and Emma and the foundation. There's my relationship with May. There's the person I'm becoming, who I think might actually be the person I was always meant to be." Jake stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of his aftershave. "Victoria, you rebuilt your life from the ground up this past year. Whatever you decide, that doesn't disappear. But what if I can't be both people?" she asked, voicing her deepest fear. "What if the Victoria who runs Meridian can't be the Victoria who helps Emma with her homework and makes her sister laugh and—" She hesitated, then finished softly, "and holds your hand on the porch swing?" Jake's expression softened. "Maybe you don't have to choose between being successful and being happy. Maybe the trick is redefining what success means to you." Before Victoria could respond, Emma burst back into the kitchen, excitement radiating from her small face. "Miss Victoria, I just got an email from my doctor. My latest test results came back, and he says I'm stable enough to go on the class camping trip next month." Victoria knelt down to Emma's level, genuine joy momentarily displacing her dilemma. "That's wonderful news, sweetheart. We should celebrate." As Emma chattered about sleeping bags and marshmallows, Victoria caught Jake's eye over the child's head. In that moment, watching father and daughter together, Victoria knew what her answer to the board would be. At exactly noon, Victoria walked into Meridian's gleaming headquarters for the first time in months. The receptionist's jaw dropped at the sight of her, and whispers followed her path to the boardroom where the directors waited. She wore neither her old power suits nor her new casual attire, but something in between, professional yet approachable, much like the proposal she was about to present. "Gentlemen, ladies," she greeted the assembled board members. "I believe you're expecting my answer." The board chair, Harold Winters, a man who'd once been her mentor before becoming her greatest critic, nodded tersely. "We are. And I hope for all our sakes it's the right one." Victoria placed a thick folder on the table. "It's not the one you're expecting. I'm not returning as CEO." Before the murmurs could grow too loud, she continued, "But I am proposing a partnership between Meridian and the Chen Foundation that will benefit both organizations." For the next hour, Victoria outlined her vision, a subsidiary of Meridian dedicated to medical technology for rare diseases, with the foundation providing real-world testing and feedback. The foundation would maintain its independence while gaining access to Meridian's vast resources. And Victoria would serve as liaison between the two, leveraging her unique understanding of both worlds. "This isn't what we discussed," Harold said when she finished, his tone icy. "No," Victoria agreed. "It's better. Meridian gets positive press, tax benefits, and first access to an untapped market. The foundation gets funding and technological support. And I get to honor all my commitments, to this company, to the foundation, and to myself." The debate that followed was heated, with several board members threatening to walk out. But Victoria had come prepared with market projections, testimonials from families the foundation had helped, and, most persuasively, interest from Meridian's biggest competitors who'd already reached out about similar partnerships. By late afternoon, a tentative agreement had been reached. Victoria left the Meridian building feeling lighter than she had in years, despite the challenges that lay ahead. She drove straight to Jake's house, where she knew he and Emma would be having their Friday movie night. She found them in the living room, a half-eaten pizza on the coffee table and a paused animated film on the television. Emma ran to hug her, while Jake hung back, his expression questioning. "So?" he asked simply when Emma returned to the couch. "So," Victoria replied, a slow smile spreading across her face, "it turns out you can redefine success after all." Later, after Emma had fallen asleep and they'd moved to the back porch with glasses of wine, Victoria explained the details of the agreement. "It won't be easy," she concluded. "There will be resistance from both sides. But for the first time in my career, I feel like I'm building something that matters beyond the bottom line." Jake listened intently, pride evident in his expression. When she finished, he reached for her hand. "I never doubted you'd find a way. You're still the most formidable person I've ever met, you've just found better things to fight for." Victoria squeezed his hand, allowing herself to fully relax for the first time that day. "There's something else I need to tell you," she said, her voice softer now. "During all those board meetings today, when they were pushing me to choose between worlds, I realized something important." "What's that?" Jake asked, his eyes reflecting the soft porch light. "That some choices aren't really choices at all. When something matters enough, you find a way to make it work." She took a deep breath. "You and Emma matter enough, Jake. More than I ever thought possible." The months that followed tested Victoria's resolve in ways she hadn't anticipated. Integrating the Foundation's compassionate approach with Meridian's profit-driven culture created friction on both sides. There were late nights, heated arguments with board members, and moments when she questioned whether her compromise would ultimately satisfy anyone. But there were victories too. The first came 3 months after the partnership began, when their joint research team had a breakthrough in treating Emma's condition. The experimental therapy reduced her symptoms by nearly 60%, allowing her to participate in activities that had once been impossible. The sight of Emma running across a soccer field for the first time, her face alight with joy, made every difficult meeting worth it. Victoria's relationship with her sister continued to strengthen as well. May, who had once viewed Victoria's corporate ambitions with disdain, now found herself impressed by her sister's ability to navigate both worlds while staying true to her values. They established a weekly sister dinner, sacred time that not even the most urgent business could interrupt. "You know," May said during one such dinner, 6 months into the new arrangement, "I never thought I'd say this, but you might actually be better at this balancing act than you were at being just a CEO." Victoria laughed. "That's because I was terrible at balance before. All I knew was how to work and how to win." "And now?" May prompted. Victoria considered the question. "Now I know there are different kinds of winning. And some of them don't look like winning at all until you step back and see the whole picture." The most challenging aspect of Victoria's new life wasn't professional but personal. As her feelings for Jake deepened, she found herself hesitating to take their relationship further. The memory of her parents' failed marriage, 2 driven professionals who ultimately had nothing left to give each other, haunted her. And then there was Emma to consider. The little girl had already lost one mother figure. Victoria couldn't bear the thought of disappointing her if things didn't work out. Jake sensed her hesitation but never pushed. Instead, he simply included her in their lives. Family game nights, weekend outings, parent-teacher conferences where he introduced Victoria as Emma's friend, while his eyes said something more. Gradually, Victoria found herself building not just a foundation or a business partnership, but a family. The turning point came unexpectedly, nearly a year after the bathroom encounter. Victoria had been invited to Emma's school for Career Day, an honor that both thrilled and terrified her. Standing before a classroom of curious 8-year-olds, she'd carefully explained her work in terms they could understand, showing pictures of children the foundation had helped. Afterward, as the class broke for lunch, Emma's teacher approached Victoria with a drawing Emma had made during the presentation. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands, a tall man labeled Dad, a small girl with curly hair labeled Me, and a woman with straight black hair labeled, "My Victoria." "She talks about you all the time," the teacher explained. "Last week when we did family trees, Emma insisted on adding you. She said sometimes families grow in different ways, and you were growing into hers." That evening, Victoria showed the drawing to Jake, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't want to overstep," she began. Jake interrupted her by taking both her hands in his. "Victoria, you've been part of this family for months now. Emma and I have just been waiting for you to realize it." "I'm scared," she admitted, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. Victoria Chen, who had faced down corporate raiders and market crashes without flinching, was terrified of loving and being loved in return. "So am I," Jake confessed. "But I've learned something from watching you this past year. Sometimes the scariest choices lead to the most beautiful outcomes." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. Instead, Victoria closed the distance between them, their first kiss gentle and questioning before deepening with certainty. When they finally parted, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I've never been good at relationships." Jake smiled. "That's okay. Neither have I. But we're both pretty good at figuring things out as we go." 2 weeks later, Victoria officially moved the last of her things into Jake's house, now their house. Emma helped arrange Victoria's books on the shelves, carefully integrating them with their own collection in what seemed to Victoria a perfect metaphor for their lives. That night, after Emma was asleep, Victoria and Jake sat on their porch swing, a tradition that had become precious to them both. The neighborhood was quiet, stars visible despite the city lights in the distance. "I've been thinking," Jake said, his arm around her shoulders. "About that day in the bathroom." Victoria groaned. "Must we remember my mascara-streaked meltdown?" "Yes," Jake insisted with a smile. "Because if I hadn't walked through that wrong door at exactly the right moment, none of this would have happened. You'd still be the ice queen of Silicon Valley, and I'd still be the guy racing out at 5 o'clock every day." "And now?" Victoria prompted, echoing her sister's question from months before. "Now we're just us," Jake said simply. "A family figuring it out together." 1 year later, as Victoria helped Emma blow out the candles on her 9th birthday cake, Jake marveled at how a single mistaken door could lead to such profound change. The woman once feared throughout Silicon Valley now spent her weekends helping Emma with science projects and teaching her to code. The foundation they'd built together had already helped hundreds of families access treatments they couldn't otherwise afford. That night, after the party, Victoria found Jake looking at old photos of Emma as a toddler. "Do you ever wonder how different things might have been if you hadn't walked into that bathroom?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Every day," Jake admitted. "But then I remember something my grandfather used to say, sometimes the wrong door is exactly the right one, if you're brave enough to step through it." Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'm glad you were brave enough." The following spring brought another milestone. The partnership between Meridian and the foundation had proven so successful that other companies were following their model. Victoria had been invited to give the keynote address at a major tech conference, focusing on the integration of profit and purpose. As she prepared her speech the night before, Jake found her surrounded by note cards in their home office. "Nervous?" he asked, setting a cup of tea beside her. "Terrified," Victoria admitted. "This isn't just about business strategy. It's personal." Jake picked up one of her cards, reading aloud, "True innovation requires vulnerability." That's quite different from the Victoria Chen who used to make junior executives cry during quarterly reviews. Victoria laughed. That Victoria was effective, but she was also lonely. And she never would have found you and Emma. The conference hall was packed the next day as Victoria took the stage. In the front row sat Jake and Emma, alongside May and several families the foundation had helped. Victoria had given hundreds of speeches throughout her career, but never with so much of herself invested in the words. "A year and a half ago," she began, "I thought I knew exactly what success looked like. It was measured in market share, stock prices, and competitors defeated. Then I found myself sitting on a bathroom floor, having just received the worst news of my life, when a door opened that shouldn't have." She paused, finding Jake's eyes in the audience. The man who walked through that door had every reason to turn around and pretend he hadn't seen me. Instead, he stayed. And in that moment of unexpected compassion, both our lives changed forever. As Victoria continued her speech, weaving together the personal and professional lessons of the past 18 months, she watched understanding dawn on the faces before her. These were people who, like her former self, had sacrificed relationships, health, and happiness on the altar of professional success. Now she was offering them a different vision, not of work-life balance, which implied constant compromise, but of work-life integration, where purpose aligned across all aspects of life. "The foundation we've built doesn't just help children with rare diseases," she concluded. "It helps all of us remember why we do what we do. Technology without humanity is just machinery. Business without purpose is just transaction. Life without connection is just existence." The standing ovation that followed was gratifying, but it was the quiet moment afterward, when Emma ran up to hug her and Jake looked at her with unmistakable love, that Victoria treasured most. As they left the conference center together, a young executive approached Victoria, her expression earnest. "Ms. Chen, your speech changed how I see my entire career. I've been making the same mistakes you described, prioritizing advancement over everything else. How did you find the courage to change?" Victoria smiled, glancing at Jake and Emma who waited patiently nearby. "I didn't find courage," she replied. "I found people worth being courageous for." The rest followed naturally. That evening, as they celebrated with a quiet dinner at home, Victoria realized how completely her definition of success had transformed. The woman who once measured her worth by her office size now found her greatest achievements in Emma's improving health, in the foundation's growing impact, and in the love that filled their home. "I have something for you," Jake said after dinner, handing her a small wrapped package. Inside was a key on a silver keychain engraved with a simple message. "The right door." Victoria looked at him questioningly. "It's symbolic," Jake explained with a smile. "A reminder that sometimes life's biggest gifts come from the most unexpected places." Victoria closed her hand around the key, emotion welling in her throat. "I used to think I had all the answers," she said softly. "Now I'm just grateful for the questions that led me here." If this story of unexpected connection and second chances touched your heart, remember that life's most beautiful moments often come from our greatest challenges. Sometimes, the wrong door leads to exactly where we need to be. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of compassion and the unexpected ways our lives can change in an instant.